I think I have discovered a critical flaw in my whole using the notes app to keep track of what I did during the week.
Well, what's
So we can
that?
talk about. Well, the first thing listed on my file for this week says poison slash Macy's. I
Okay.
have no idea what that is. I mean, I know what Macy's is. I guess I know what poison is. I do not remember writing that. I do not know what I mean by that.
Mm,
So if somebody else knows if Macy's is poisoning us or something, I don't know. Does Macy's sell poison now? Is that a new thing? Why was I interested in that? I don't know. Anyway, so just take that with you, everybody. Poison slash Macy's. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Magical Talking Hat podcast, the only podcast in the world. There's a lot going on during the holiday seasons. Sometimes the cold opens aren't as great as other times. Just deal with it. Stop constantly harassing me and threatening to dox me if I don't have better cold opens. Hundreds of listeners are doing this on the daily basis. I needed to stop. I can't take it anymore. I'm Tony.
and I'm William. This is episode 664.
Oh, crap. I am not ready for the devil episode. I am not.
On the solstice, we're going to have a episode on the solstice this
I know.
year.
What are we gonna do? I don't. What is it?
Mm.
Also, we'll post an episode on the solstice. We won't record it on the solstice.
True. That's true.
All right. For those of you just joining, stop harassing me about the cold opens. We have a hat. It's magic in that it has its own email address. The magical talking hat at gmail.com. People like to write in sometimes, not right now, but sometimes to that email address, the magical talking hat at gmail.com with whatever the crap they feel like. And the hat magically forwards us the emails, and then we read them and we talk about them. But not today. So here we are, Peter Stevens. How's your week been? Has it been an actual week? We recorded on Monday last time, yeah. So I think it's been an actual week. Did you
Um,
see any giant blockbuster movies that you forget to talk about?
I don't think so. We've been playing Diablo
Diablo
4.
4, yeah.
Yeah, that's been pretty fun. And it seems like we've been watching some things like we are watching and now I don't remember what we're watching. There's some shows that are on right now
Oh,
that
well,
we're watching.
clearly you were watching very closely.
I have talked about them, but now I'm drawing a blank. Oh, the one that I've talked about is the Bass Reeves one. Still really
Yes.
good. And
And that's on Paramount, not on Peacock, right?
I don't remember.
I think you said it was on Paramount because we have Peacock now
Oh,
for a year
maybe it's
because
on
they had a
Paramount.
deal where $20 for a year. So I was like, well, fuck it.
Well, there's another one. Why am I drawing a blank on these? This is weird. But it's mostly just school. And the kids have been over the last couple days because they had a fire in their house.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. I mean, it was just one room and it got taken care of. So I think it's all going to be fine. But they, in the immediate aftermath, they needed a place
Ooh,
to stay.
ooh.
And then the boy was sick. He has some kind of stomach thing. They were going to go back today, but he was very sick on the way. So they came back here and they're at the doctor now. So, I mean,
Oh, I
I think
thought
it's
we were
just
going to get on screen Delmer.
that would be awesome. But no,
Yeah.
he's at the doctor now. I'm sure it's just a bug of some kind, but they need to figure that out and see if he can
Oh,
take
of
some
course.
medicine so he's not having so many problems. So yeah, there's been some excitement over here in this house for the last few days. Yeah, the fire was alarming, no pun intended, but
Yeah.
he's a volunteer fireman in Blairstown. And he found it interesting that so he responded to his own fire. And he
I am on the scene.
And he was surprised by how difficult it was. Like, like he's done this 1,000 times, but when it was his house and he had, he's got to get his family out and everything, it was more nerve-wracking than I think he anticipated it would be. I think I would be this to me. Yeah, I think I'd be the same. Not just in that it would be a little nerve-wracking, but that I might not anticipate for whatever reason. You'd think you would, but it's kind of like the whole therapy thing is like that too. One of the reasons that some of the training we do, I think I've talked about this, some of the training we do specifically targets that. Like one of my professors says, whatever your thing is, you will have a client who pushes that button. I mean, you don't think about it. You just think, oh, I'm just going to see clients, but something's going to happen where you're going to see your mom or your daughter or the best friend that you wished you could have, been a better friend to, whatever. And that button's going to get pushed. And somehow you're going to have to not let that get in the way of you helping this person. And, but it's true. For some reason, you don't really think about it until someone who's done it for a while stops and tells you this will probably happen, right? I mean, in therapy, it's called countertransference, right? Which was originally a different type of. It was a very specific concept when Freud, I think, came up with it, but now it's kind of broadened to like anything the client does to push your buttons. Like, let's say they're on some extreme part of the political spectrum that you really disagree with. That wouldn't technically be countertransference in the original definition, but now it's countertransference has just come to represent anything the client's going to do that might throw you off your therapist game, basically. And
also, if you give your kitchen tops to someone else.
Nice. That's a good one. Good job. Or if you're dealing with someone who, has committed some kind of crime that you find really offensive or really, horrific, that might be difficult if you that kind of thing. That all falls under the umbrella of countertransference.
Always taking a penny, never leaving a penny.
And I wondered if so he was experiencing this with his own house, but I wonder if you would experience it like, okay, this isn't my house, but there's something about this house or these people, right, that reminds me of my family or whatever that would make it difficult for you to. I mean, I didn't think about first responders having anything like countertransference, but I suppose maybe
I think everybody does. I think everybody does in all walks of life, because here's the thing. When you are attempting to do something, whatever it is, some things, having an emotional investment can help. I care, so I'm going to try extra hard and I'm going to do better because I have emotional investment. You don't care, and you don't give it the extra oomph that I do, and I do a better job. There are also tons of situations where I'm going to do the best job if I can be emotionally detached. And sometimes it's not something as obvious as like therapy or even emergency response, which those are very obvious ones. But just in general, there are going to be times where it's like, I need to focus. I need to not let my emotions get involved. So the less I am emotionally invested, the better for the situation.
Yeah.
Until it's a point where I just could not give less of a shit. And then I'm probably worsening it. But I mean, both situations exist in all sorts of combinations. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, I take it back. I was surprised the moment you said it, but then I was like, oh, of course. Because yeah, that in an emergency situation, usually I think emotional investment is going to be bad. There are probably exceptions. The ubiquitous mom lifting a car off of her child thing, which, do we have record of that? People talk about that all
Yeah.
the time, but I suddenly was like, is that just hypothetical? Because we
I don't
hold
know.
that up as evidence for things a lot, but I don't ever hear about it actually
I'll
happening.
have to look that one
Kind of
up.
like an
You're right.
urban legend sort of deal.
Well, one
She
thing that
picked up the car because the man with the hook hand was in the back seat. And like,
one thing that therapists sometimes talk about is, countertransference. There's an element of empathy there, right? So that's an avenue of connection. It
oh
doesn't
yeah,
have to be inappropriate. It doesn't have to make you shut down. You can go, okay, well, I'm going to take the good parts of this where I'm connected to this person and I really understand what they're going through. I'm going to capitalize on that. I'm going to do that instead of maybe indulging in. I mean, one time it happened to me. I was role playing with a guy who was a veteran and he had PTSD. Oh man, we were just role playing, but it's like the last thing I wanted to be was this guy's therapist. I just wanted to like be his pal, be his
for
brother,
those
be
of
the.
you who don't listen regularly, William famously hates veterans.
I just wanted,
and
I
thinks
just wanted to,
PTSD is fake.
to put my hand on his shoulder and say, "Hey, it's okay, brother." I just wanted to. I didn't want to be a therapist. I wanted to be something else in that moment. But that's not going to help the client. It won't. That's not what they're there for, and that's more about me than him, which I knew. But in that role playing situation, which was the first time I'd ever kind of been in that situation, I noticed it, and it was pretty striking, and I was a little surprised by it because, again, I mean, I've known what countertransference is for a very long time, but I've dealt with lots of situations. I have been in some emergency type situations where I kept my head just fine. I mean, I didn't think. I think I thought, well, I'm 54 years old. I've experienced a lot of things. This is probably not going to impact me the same way it does other people. But what I found out was because of those things, it affects me worse, right? Because I've known these people, right?
You
I've
have more
experienced,
instances
yeah,
to it, more points of attachment.
exactly. My brother served in the Air Force. Now didn't he didn't serve in combat, or he doesn't have PTSD or anything, but I'm sure that has something to do with me feeling a little bit more or whatever. So yeah, there were a lot of things that I realized I really need to think about, like with my mom and things like that, where this is going to come up. So I need to be aware and prepare. And I think the clients I've seen since practicum started, I think I've been fine, but I've also thought this is one of those people that really would have affected me before if I hadn't worked through some stuff. So I think my program's been really effective in helping me prepare for that stuff, and I'm really
Nice.
grateful for that
I
training.
know there are a lot of demographics in society that you cannot stand: veterans, old ladies,
Stop
children. So I am glad you have been able to overcome your rage and disdain
it.
for these people.
There's a point past which you're no longer empathizing or even sympathizing. You're feeling your own things, and
Yeah,
that's the point you have
that's
to sort
where
of.
I live.
That's the point you have to not go into. It's okay to empathize. Better to empathize than to sympathize, obviously, but to start just feeling your own stuff and letting that take over, that's what you want to avoid. And it's hard. I mean, it's hard for me anyway. Maybe some of my colleagues it's easier, but for me, I do have to really work at it. And maybe in a few years it'll be easier, right, as I practice. But yeah, it is a thing. But how was your week?
I don't know. My weekend was very busy.
Did you get poisoned from Macy's or
No, I meant
poison?
to pick some up, but I forgot. Um, no, this weekend I did a lot of traveling
Oh,
because all the children's had the concerts.
oh,
So
okay.
we drove down to Decatur, Illinois,
Hmm.
um, to see my niece in her choir concert at
Hmm.
Millikan University. And then we stayed there that night because it was a pretty late concert. And then the next day drove to Chillicothe, where my in-laws are and everything, because her brother was having his high school choir concert
Mm.
then. And then we got home shortly before bed last night. So a lot of driving, a lot of Illinois, a lot of choir concerts, a lot of family. Very tired. Also, Decatur, Illinois is a weird ass town.
Is it?
It has so many missing letters and burnt out bulbs. It's a pretty big city, but you know how like you see like a lit up sign and like one of the letters is burned out? Like every business in Decatur is like that. And then for some reason their highway signs, they're not missing letters, but all the reflective stuff is off them. So like when it's dark, it looks like they're missing letters, but just like certain letters on the highway signs. This is a very weird town. But it was nice, and the hotel we stayed in was nice, and we'll probably be back down there again. And the concert was insane too, but it was very active. There were like 4 different choirs, and they kept trading members, and then they would move. They never were still. They would go off stage and back on stage in different parts of the stage and the side of the thing, and some of them were up in the balcony and had to stay in the balcony. Some of them moved. It was very. I was tired for them by the end. Um, and then the high school concert was good, except that was weird because I realized now that my niece has graduated, I recognize almost none of the faces. I have been to Iowa or Illinois Valley Community High School performances many times. Uh, and so eventually I sort of recognize kids, and some of them I know because they're friends of my niece and nephew, but I recognize faces, and like I've seen them enough that I'm like, I don't know who that kid is, but he used to be bad and now he's good and things like that. And apparently they were all my niece's age because I recognize like 2 kids, not counting my nephew, out of this whole thing.
Mm.
So that was a little weird, but it was fine. I don't know what's on the thing. I probably did some things and saw some things and had some things. Poison Macy's.
Yeah, I'm really trying to figure out what that must be.
Right. My hunch, just because of the Macy's part, is that there was a commercial, but I don't know why there was poison. Um, I've been playing video games on the Switch
Oh yeah.
because I took it with me over
Mm,
Thanksgiving,
mm-hmm.
and I bought a couple of games for it then and played some of them, and then I came home and tried, and I'm really into one called Circus Electrique,
Mm.
and it is a steampunky Victorian era uh turn-based combat thing. For a lot of people, this probably won't mean much to you, but for a lot of people, the mechanics are very similar to Darkest Dungeons, which was a very popular game. Um, but it's one of those turn-based things where it's like, here's all your people standing 1, 2, 3, 4, and here's bad guys standing 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you just hit each other. And the theme is it's Victorian London, and these are all circus performers who are going. There's something weird happening and making people in the town go crazy and attack everybody, and so you're trying to figure it out while wandering a town and beating them all up. And then the other part in between battles is building up and dealing with your actual circus and like putting on performances so that you can earn money for the other things. And so it's really cool gameplay loop because you can't get too bored because you constantly are switching between the two.
Mm.
Like literally after every battle, I have to go back and deal with the circus and everything. And it's just very cool looking. Even all the menus and everything are very steampunky Victorian romance sort of look to it. And it's an intriguing story. There's a lot of cool bits. I'm having a lot of fun with it. But I had not played it over Thanksgiving, but I played it at home on the Switch on the big TV. And then when we went on this trip, I played it on the Switch by itself again, and it's so tiny. It's so hard to read. I think I'm discovering I have never been able to gel with a portable gaming device.
Mm.
And I think maybe it's just the size. Like it's just too little.
Yeah.
Too tiny. But we'll have to see. I'm having fun with that. And I'm having fun playing with the Switch. I haven't hardly ever played with the Switch. We mostly got it for exercise that I stopped, and then for Animal Crossing for Trish during COVID, but we haven't done a lot. It mostly just sits there. So it's been fun to kind of try it out. The controls are different, but it's interesting. I very purposefully use the two Joy-Cons. I don't hook them to it came with a little thing that you could hook it to, so it would be like a little bit like a more of a controller. I still
Right.
do it like this. And at first it was very awkward, but I'm getting used to it. I
Cool.
just like it better. We have cases on them that we would have to take off to put on there, and also it doesn't charge while it's on there. And it's all so, but that's fun. Um, we are still watching Witcher. I would say at this point we are not enjoying it, but there's only 2 episodes left. Then we'll be done because I don't think we'll continue next season. Not a lot else. I'm planning on jumping on Poker Face now that I have Peacock. That might be
Uh,
my next pick. But also,
for All Mankind, that's the other show we're watching.
oh, oh, I have heard that is very good, and I do not want to watch it.
Why?
Um, because the people I've heard from their glowing reviews have essentially been, it makes me feel all of the feelings. And there are some feelings I definitely don't want my TV shows to make me feel. I have heard it is a lot. I have heard it's really good, but I have heard it is quite the emotional trek. You're dead inside. Maybe you didn't notice, but and I know how you hate astronauts.
It's very good speculative
He
fiction.
just calls them space veterans with just such disgust in his voice. It's really awful.
It's very good speculative fiction.
I've heard it's quite a good show.
Yeah, it's very, very good. I mean, I guess it has, I mean, sure, it's like any other show with emotional stuff. I don't know.
I mean, you hate space veterans, so maybe it's just not
Stop it.
hitting you at the same. Sorry. You hate all veterans, including the ones in space.
Okay.
I'm gonna get you fired before you get hired.
Once again, I regret
Put this podcast as a reference on your resume. No, but I have heard that show is really, really good.
It is good.
No, I'm excited about Poker Face. Also, I'm excited. There's a new season of Fargo with just a ton of people I really like, which is kind of always the case with Fargo. But this one's got John Hamm and Juno Temple, and I've already forgotten the others. But
when does it go? When does it start?
It's in the process of happening right now.
Wow, I didn't know there was one of those.
It's on Hulu. I don't know if it's done yet.
There's a new True Detective coming out.
Oh, really?
With Jodie Foster and.
Oh.
I think it takes place in Alaska.
Again, I definitely will watch it, but that sounds intriguing.
Yeah, we look forward to that.
Did watch a couple movies I want to talk about.
Oh, good.
First off, I watched one that it's another way. I watch a lot of film-based YouTube stuff and a lot of video game-based YouTube stuff. And often by sort of coincidence, like disparate channels and things will mention something around, or I at least will see the videos that mention it around the same time, and I'll suddenly be like, a bunch of people have been talking about this. I should check it out. And this came up recently with a 1990 horror movie called There's Nothing Out There. And people mention this partially because it didn't really make as much of a splash as people think it should have. But also, it is one of the earliest examples of sort of a meta horror movie a la Scream.
Sure, yeah.
And the premise being a bunch of kids go out into a cabin to party or whatever, but one of them is like a big horror movie buff, and he's convinced like everything that's happening is very much like this is clearly a place we're going to get murdered or whatever, or even to the degree of like, why would you say there's nothing out there? Like that's the last thing somebody says right before they get murdered. And he's just very into that whole thing. It's a fine movie. It's not great. It's not terrible. It's fine if you like this kind of thing, and it's fine. But the thing that really got me, so I mean, spoiler alert, the horror movie guy is right, and there is bad stuff because it would have been a weird movie otherwise. But it doesn't make any sense. Like the whole first act is him really not just like teasing, but like actively trying to stop people from doing things that are pretty mundane, because in a horror movie they would be very bad because they are very trope filled things to get yourself killed. But the premise of this movie is that it's not a movie.
Yeah.
As is the premise of many movies, most movies, arguably. And they get really annoyed with him. And like, here's the thing. He was right by sheer coincidence.
Correct.
And his behavior is pathological.
Correct.
Like, have you seen this movie?
No, but what you're describing is that.
But like his intensity with which, and even just by himself, like he's very much not joking, and he's being a pain in the ass. And the fact that in a completely unrelated note, and also the idea is supposed to be that then he's like the expert and so he can save them all. No, he just knows what's bad, but he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah,
like that. But it's like, it was so annoying because I'm like, you're just a delusional asshole.
There are other movies like
accidentally
that,
hit the jackpot this time.
Yeah, but that's a thing that's been done before.
Yeah, but I'm used to it being much more tame. Like they just say, like, "Oh, this freaks me out. Oh, this could be a horror movie." This guy is like actively blocking people from leaving the building. Like he won't sleep in certain there's a bunch of shit he won't do, and it's by and large stuff that is very normal. We're having a vacation stuff. That if it was a horror movie, it would probably be a bad idea. But it's not a horror movie. And in fact, it is even a plot point that his friend, who's arguably the lead of the movie, is just as into horror movies as him, but very much aware that life is not a horror movie. And
it'd been fun if there a twist near the end was that guy who's you're talking about actually set up all the horrible things to happen.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
It could have been a April Fool's Day kind of no, the movie, not the premise, but also the premise, I suppose.
Yeah.
Sorry, spoiler alerts for that movie, people. There's a slasher movie called April Fool's Day that's pretty good. And at the very end, it turns out that literally the entire thing was fake. And like all the victims were in on it, and only like one person wasn't. And it was like a tryout for like a horror movie weekend thing they were going to do. But at the very end, you find out like everyone was involved. And so it's a weird sort of ending for that. Anyway, yeah. So I mean, I think it's on Tubi or something. It's not bad if you like those sort of supernatural horror slashers out of the 80s, like the shitty ones nobody's ever heard of. It's a fun time. It was fine. But that guy just really bugged me. But more importantly, Trish and I, after discussion and some careful consideration, finally decided to sit down for the first time, and both of us for the first time see The Exorcist.
Oh.
Have you seen The Exorcist?
A couple times, yeah. What?
I don't get it.
You don't get what?
Like, I did not find it scary. I did not like it. I did not think it seemed like it was well done. And I freely admit I am very, very confident. The problem is with me, not with the movie The Exorcist. Because The Exorcist, the degree to which its social impact, the degree of its social impact cannot be understated.
Right.
As somebody in a thing I was watching recently said, it's not even pop culture, it's just culture
Yeah. Yeah.
at this point, and
Hmm.
everybody knows the thing. But like, well, first, here's a fun one. If you haven't seen The Exorcist, but like me, like you know all the things about it, you only know about the last 40 minutes of this 2 hour movie.
Hmm.
Most of the movie is not what you would think of as The Exorcist.
Hmm.
Like, think about the plot points of The Exorcist. Those all come in at the very end.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Most of also Linda Blair's character Regan, you know, the girl who's possessed, in my opinion, not one of the main characters. Certainly not the main character.
Hmm.
It is way more about Ellen Burstyn's character and the young priest. I don't remember the actor's name. And it is a very slow burn. Big swaths of it sort of don't make sense in places. There is a definite there is something in it that if you were a parent, I would think it would probably be horrific to you in a completely non-supernatural way.
Hmm.
Because a lot of the movie is something's wrong with the girl and we don't know what it is. And a lot of it is the mom having to do with that because the girl is having all these issues and none of the doctors can answer them and she is losing her shit.
Hmm.
And I can imagine that would be a thing that some parents would resonate very strongly with them and be very scary to them.
Hmm.
I can, to coin a phrase, sympathize if not empathize. Um, in the same way that, to pull a random example, uh, a woman who raised a child with asthma might really think the movie Signs is impressive and scary and good, when in reality, that movie is bullshit. And I know
I
most people like it, but that movie is bullshit. That movie's dumb as hell.
I happen to know a woman with a kid with severe
Really?
asthma
Dude, what a fun coincidence.
who resonated with that movie just for that reason.
Exactly. And so that could be a thing, but it was, and I also understand that I grew up in a world where they're possessed by the devil and we have to exorcise them is a standard movie plot.
Yeah.
And I understand that when this movie came out, 1973, exorcism was a thing that just about everybody had forgotten had ever been a thing.
Mm.
Basically, the Catholic Church did some exorcising, and then the concept of psychology was invented, and we kind of stopped doing it.
Or we thought we did anyway.
Well, we mostly did. Honestly, it appears that this movie and its impact have sort of,
Oh,
it's
revived.
a terrible word, I was going to say resurrected the practice.
Yes.
Even within the Catholic Church itself,
Sure.
and of course outside, people try and do it too.
Sure,
Like,
sure.
this movie is responsible for a lot of stuff, but it's not. And even people who like me were like, I don't really get it, are like, I like the characters and I'm invested in the story. I did not like the characters. I was not invested in the story.
Oh.
I thought the characters were not good. There were the number of scenes that I feel served no purpose and the movie would have been basically identical if you had edited them out completely, is probably more than the number of scenes that don't fall into that category for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
So much of this movie I did not care about. So much of this movie is full of, and this is the thing I've talked about before, I watched this movie and feel like I missed a lot of scenes.
Hmm.
There were a lot of, like, here's a scene, and then here's another scene that progresses from the first. And I'm like, I really feel like there was a story beat in the middle that I missed.
Hmm.
Because this seems like a jump. And then just weird stuff. There's a police detective involved. He doesn't need to be there. He
Hmm.
has several scenes. All of them are kind of weird. They're kind of, I think, going for Columbo, like just one more question kind of thing. But they don't play out that way. And he serves no purpose in the film. Straight up.
Hmm.
every plot point would have gone exactly the same without him. So I don't know. I don't know. I feel bad because again, I think it's me. It's not it. But didn't get it. Didn't get it. Also, this is a little side note. There's a scene there's a lot of crazy scenes in The Exorcist, and we all know spitting pea soup, the head spinning around, several really terrible lines that were said in the movie that I don't want to repeat because they're nasty, and that's the point of them, is that they're nasty. Whatever, demon possessed girl saying gross stuff, whatever. All of these things. There's a lot of famous bits. There's a bit at a party where the girl has an accident, and that's a very famous bit. There's even a famous bit with a spider walk down the stairs that's not actually in the movie. It's a deleted scene, but a lot of us know it because we've seen it. I years ago saw a documentary on the making of the movie. It's fascinating. Especially what the woman who does the voice of the demon while it's possessing Regan did in order to achieve that effect, including drinking again when she had been a sober alcoholic for many years.
Oh, wow.
Like, it was a whole deal. But there is a scene in The Exorcist in which a psychiatrist attempts to hypnotize the girl and tell her things, and they have a conversation. Sorry, maybe the hypnotist. Anyway, there's one where there is a mental health professional dealing with her, and it basically fails because the possessed girl reaches up and grabs him by the testicles and like crushes them, and he falls over and screams and freaks out, and then we cut because that was a terrible scene. How has that never been mentioned in all of this stuff? I was like, and you remember the time when the girl grabbed the psychologist by the nuts? That was crazy, because it was crazy. Why has I have heard so many people talk about this movie. No, I didn't know that was a scene. How did I not know that was a scene? That's crazy.
I don't know.
Just as crazy as most of the ones we're always talking about. Yeah, I don't know. I feel bad about it. What's your take on it? You've seen it a couple of times, so you clearly liked it better than me.
So I have a feeling this is a little bit like the whole original Godzilla thing. You weren't impressed with the film craft on the original Godzilla, and I was. I thought it was pretty genius. And I think the same thing goes here. I feel like some of the film craft was really good. Now, in both cases, I'm really trying to put myself in the place they were in at the time they were making it, what resources they had, and so on. There's a book, I believe, that The Exorcist is based on, which was a best-selling book.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking of how that was adapted in that case. So, to me, I just feel like, and of course I could be completely wrong. I mean, I don't know what it was like to make Godzilla 1954 or whatever it was. I don't know what it was like to make this film when it was made, but my imagining of it makes me think that they overcame some significant challenges to make something that resonated with audiences, and that impresses me.
It impresses me too.
Now, how did I respond to Exorcist first time I saw it? No, I didn't particularly think it was scary or that compelling in the way that people say. Not me personally. But I mean, I suspect some of that has to do with some of the things you were saying. For example, well, by the time I saw it, because I didn't see it when I was young. I mean, I saw it, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, but for the first time. But I'd seen so many things before that, right? And I'm generally also not a superstitious person. And I think it really affects people who are what I would consider a superstitious bent. I don't mean to say that judgmentally. I just mean there are some people that really, I mean, they believe in demons and that stuff. They believe that people get possessed. And I think for a believer, at least at the time, there's something really convincing about it, and also especially horrifying because it's happening to a little girl, right?
Well, and if they are to be believed, I believe the author of the novel and the director of the film to this day maintain that not that it's a true story, but that it is based on real shit.
Yes,
this
that's
is a
another thing.
real, they are both believers in a
Yeah,
big
yeah,
way.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think that helps things like the Conjuring universe too, that people get the impression that this is based on something that really happened. And I think that's very compelling to some people. I mean, that's not my draw to any of these things, because I mean, you can find like videos and other documented cases of possessions, and you can see what the real ones, where the Catholic Church actually sends someone out to them, what they really look like. And of course, they don't look,
There's a lot of
like
winking at the camera and sound effects.
I mean, a lot of times the person who is possessed is speaking in a growly voice and things like that. But I mean, you don't. I've heard claims of levitation or objects or whatever. None of that's ever been captured on film or anything like that. Everything you see when you look at documented, like video evidence of documented cases, you can imagine, well, this is a person who is having a psychotic episode. I mean, there's nothing about it that seems supernatural at all. So, and so if you have that particular mentality, which I do have, and I've had pretty much all my life, stories that are based on possession, I find them compelling for a variety of reasons, mostly because I come from a Christian background, right? So story-wise, I find them compelling, but they don't make me feel creeped out, or I have to sleep with the light on, or anything like that. And The Exorcist is no different, except I can somehow I get how it's very different from a lot of films that came after, in terms of how it really freaked people out. I mean, you hear stories about people fainting during the film and all this stuff. I can believe that. If I imagine, and maybe it's because I've known a lot of people who either did respond that way to the film, or who I think they would, right? Because of what their attitudes are. It's like, okay, I get it. I can vicariously get it, through you. I do appreciate it, though, as a piece of film craft. I'm really impressed with what it accomplished culturally, but to get what other people were feeling, I do kind of have to put myself in their position and imagine, because it doesn't like freak me out or scare me. I like watching it, though, for the film craft of it. I think it's actually quite good. I think I don't have a problem with the script or the acting or anything myself.
Yeah, as seems to be becoming the case a lot, and maybe always has been, and maybe I've only just realized. I think this is yet another instance where you and I feel basically the same, but each of us is focusing on a different part of our feelings.
Yeah, probably.
Fun little side notes about it. The youngest I've ever seen Ellen Burstyn in anything. That was crazy. And she doesn't play like a young woman in this, but I just am used to seeing her many years later. So that was very weird for me. For the first time in years, it really made me want a cigarette, because everybody fucking smokes through this entire movie. And Tubular Bells is the theme from The Exorcist, and everybody thinks that song is very creepy. I don't, because I don't associate it with The Exorcist, because I only just saw The Exorcist years ago. I got a CD off of a TV commercial or whatever. I think it was called like Celtic Thunders. I don't know what it was. It was something that was just new agey shit. And so it had like the X-Files theme and some Deep Forest and some other things. And it had Tubular Bells in it. And I listen to it all the time. So to me, it's just a cool song. But also I am very glad I've seen The Exorcist now, because, and this was the final sort of step to seeing The Exorcist for me, now I can see the sequels. And most of those are really bad from what I have gathered, especially the first one. The Exorcist 2 is put on a lot of lists as nominee for one of the worst films ever made. So I'm very excited for that. And they keep fucking making them. They're still making them. But it is funny, though. Like you say, it did things that a lot of similar plotted movies don't. There's a lot of stuff in this one that I'm like, oh yeah, the Pope's Exorcist did that. There's a lot of stuff in this movie.
Yeah.
And I didn't say it out loud, then Trish said it, and I'm like, no kidding. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it becomes that thing again. Like, there's a lot of cliches that this was the first movie that did it. They need to appreciate that, but it just didn't. And, and this is a problem because I can't give you an example that I can remember off the top of my head, but there definitely are possession-based movies that genuinely scare me.
Really interesting.
Yes. There's, if you present it a certain way, I think it's more it looks like them, but it's not them kind of thing. If you do that just right, that can get me, I think. And there's various, I haven't seen a lot of possession movies on this, but there's variations also of I can't trust my own mind. I'm not controlling my, and that can also be really scary.
Yeah,
so I think you
sure.
can do that. This movie spends a ton of time establishing characters so that you will care about what happens to them when shit goes bad. And that's a very smart filmmaking thing. Just didn't work on me.
Yeah.
Didn't care. Mostly found them weird and silly. And it doesn't help that I know what's going to happen. I mean, I didn't know about the ball grabbing, but I knew essentially, I knew where every character ends up by the end of the movie.
But like, what about
who's dead, who's insane, who's got a happy ending, who's whatever. Like,
what about the way they set the mood in it? I mean, I think that really impresses people. The way it was shot, the way it was lit, all that. I mean, I really like that.
It had moments. It had shots that I liked. Although for the most part, they were like, "Oh yeah, it's that shot," because I know them all. But no, like the first 10 minutes, I'm gonna say, takes place in northern Iraq with Father Marin working at an archaeological dig. And that's all I can say, because nothing happens for the first 10 minutes of this movie. A dude comes and talks to him and says, "We found some shit you should go look at." And he's like, "Okay." And he looks at it and they're like, "Oh yeah. And this one's not the same age as the other." Okay. And then he walks around a lot for no reason. And then he finds his evil statue just there, and he looks at the statue. And the statue has nothing to do with the movie, except later in it, he has a flashback to the statue that maybe it's related. And I also know from experience that in later movies, we did tie this shit all together. But at the time, it's just 10 minutes of an old dude walking around and nothing happening. And that's your first 10 minutes of your movie. And yeah, I don't know. Also, do you remember the section in The Exorcist where a relatively small character gets really drunk and harasses the Swiss butler, calling him a Nazi, until the butler tries to strangle him and they have to separate them forcibly? And then that never comes up again in any form and has zero payoff whatsoever, and World Without End?
That, you know what? I don't recall that.
I wonder why. Maybe because it doesn't fucking matter, but it's a thing that takes up quite a bit of time.
I don't recall that.
Yeah. The film director, because Ellen Burstyn's character is an actress, is, I don't know. We also do have weird dialogue where it's like, "Oh, do you like him? Do you want to marry him?" And I'm like, "Wait, that's the guy we were talking about? We seem to barely tolerate him, and he's an asshole." There's no connection there. Why would we ever think that? I don't even buy them as friends. And then, yeah, they have a party and he gets really drunk and he just constantly is harassing the apparently Swiss servant who works there, named Carl, about how he used to go golfing with Goebbels and he killed a bunch of people stuff. And eventually he follows him to the kitchen just to berate him some more. And eventually the butler freaks out and tries to strangle him, and they have to separate him and they send the director home. And that the director, the character is involved more, but like that plot line, never. Also, possessed Regan at the scene at the party, there's a astronaut and she walks in the room and she says, "You're gonna die up there," and that's like one of our first spooky things. Again, I don't know if the astronaut died up there. The astronaut never comes back as a character. I'm assuming he couldn't have died up there yet because the whole thing takes place in a relatively short period compared to, when they do space travel. But again, what? Why? What is happening? Also, there's a lot to be played about the steps near the outside of the house, and they look an awful lot like the steps from Joker. I don't think they are the steps from Joker, but they look an awful lot like the steps from Joker. And it was also that was very confusing because somebody died in relation to those steps, and it made zero sense to me until much later in the movie when something happens in relation to those steps, and suddenly I was like, oh, but not like in a reveal way, just in like a you didn't explain it well, and then later it made sense.
I'd have to watch it again because I
don't like. Again, it has to be me. There is no way this movie is not awesome. It's too many people. Like, I can't be the one who's right, and literally the whole of Western civilization is wrong.
There's lots of people I'm sure who don't like it or don't even understand why other people like it.
I think I do, and I do think I don't think it's particularly timeless. I think it is very rooted in when it happened. And it has had tremendous impact. I mean, we've done this again, and I know it's not exactly the same thing, but the movie that popularized the slasher genre, Halloween, I don't think it's very good.
Yeah, I don't
either. I know I'm in the minority by a long shot. I don't think it's a very good movie.
Mm-mm.
And again, it was a pioneer in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of things in that movie that hadn't been done that then got done. And that's cool. And maybe it's similar to the Beatles thing. I don't go around saying I think the Beatles weren't good musicians, but it's a similar thing. I don't give a shit about the Beatles music now. It was extremely seminal. It was extremely important. Its impacts cannot be ignored. I don't enjoy it. And I think The Exorcist is the same.
Could be. You could be right about that. Me. Yeah.
Mm. But I feel bad about it. I like this is a movie I really wanted to be into. Because this was on the short list along with Halloween of the movies I spent most of my adulthood being like, I know I like horror movies, but this is too scary for me. And now I've seen Halloween and I've seen Exorcist. Neither of them scared me one whit. The testicle grabbing scene notwithstanding. So now I guess I got to see the original Nightmare on Elm Street. But I already know that's not going to scare me. But that was another of my short lists. It's like, oh, I shouldn't watch that. And I think Friday the 13th. But having the urge to watch the Friday the 13th movies.
I was glad I saw Halloween. Like you, I don't think it's very good. Of course. Movie, but I was glad I saw it.
I want to see them. Yeah.
I was not glad I saw Nightmare on Elm Street. I didn't think there was anything redeemable about that at all. But yeah, the Exorcist movies and also the Damien movies.
The Omen?
Omen, the first one.
Fun fact, the young priest in The Exorcist is named Damien.
Yeah. The Omen didn't do anything for me personally, but I felt like I could see what it achieved when it was made and why it was so popular. I'd say as filmcraft goes, since I brought up, I was very much more impressed by, say, Godzilla, for example. But like Halloween, what I was impressed with about that film was I felt like I got a better idea of the concept, and I thought, this is actually a really strong concept. It was very poorly executed, but I could see how it could capture the imagination of a lot of people and really, propel that genre forward. So I'm glad I saw it, but I didn't think it was good.
And I should say, and this applies to Halloween, and I'm sure it would apply to Friday the 13th as well if I watched those. I get, like, I don't decry. This is a very, very personal thing for me.
Yeah,
The
me too.
mindless, zero motivated, just force of nature killer bores the shit out of me.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I am way more interested in the perspective and motivations of the bad thing.
Yep.
Even when it's like fucking demons from hell,
right,
they still have personality and motivations and reasons for doing things. And this was very deliberate. This isn't like John Carpenter couldn't bother to think of a villain. Like, it was on purpose that Mike Myers, it was a Terminator thing. It cannot be understood, cannot be reasoned with. It just comes and kills. And that's a very specific type of scary. And of course, there should be movies about that. And for some people, that's really going to resonate. I do not give a shit and do not find it scary.
Yeah,
me
too. I'm the same. Yeah.
And Jason Voorhees is similar. Mm-hmm. Freddie Mercury. Freddy Krueger, I'm way more interested in. However, again, knowing the series, not having seen most, I've seen some of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, not the first one, but some of them over the years. It becomes way too sort of comedic for my enjoyment. But conceptually, his character and his death and what happens and why, even though they sort of retcon it every single movie, I find that stuff interesting. In the same way, I've talked with Trish. I find Trish and I both really like Christian mythology. Angels, demons, that kind of shit. It's all great. That is very thin on the ground in The Exorcist.
Yeah, I guess
it goes on. All the crazy ass sequels keep trying to give it more detail, which is why I think they suck. I think it gets Weeping Angel to hell. But that which would normally be a hook for, like in The Pope's Exorcist, part of the enjoyment of The Pope's Exorcist is it had all these weird rules and things about the Christian mythology, and that was kind of fun. Also, what's fun is like the last 20 minutes of it was like a fucking Power Rangers episode for some reason. Out of fucking nowhere. That was a blast. But yeah, I please, if you listen to this and if you've seen The Exorcist, go to the blog, magicaltalkinghat.com, or just comment here on YouTube. Tell us your thoughts. I really want to know your take because, again, I had what I think is an uncommon reaction. I had a reaction I did not want. I had a reaction I'm not pleased about that, and I would love insight and perspective from other people to see if I could get a handle, at least on context. I mean, I don't think people could say things that suddenly I'm like, oh, I like this movie, but like, I want to get a better sense of why people find it scary, why people, other than it was 1973 and I didn't know any better.
Well, so what did Trish think of it?
About the same as me.
Oh, okay.
We were pretty on par with this one.
Yeah.
Which honestly becomes means we spiraled, because if we're both feeling that way, we start taking shots at the movie. And that doesn't help.
No.
But to give you perspective, I believe at least 3 times, and for the record, stone cold sober watching this, because sometimes that can matter. Nope, stone cold sober, both of us. There were at least 3 times in which I said something I blurted out of nowhere, "What the fuck?" while laughing. Like at least 3 different times where I was so shocked by something that was so ineffective for what it was going for that I just busted out. One of which was the testicle grabbing, which, again, awesome. I just don't know why we're not talking about it. It's like the end of The Hustler. Why is nobody talking about the testicle grabbing in The Exorcist? We talk about a lot of other things that I'd say are on par with the testicle grabbing, but nobody ever talks about the testicle grabbing. We talk about peeing. We talk about head spinning around. We talk about throwing up on people.
Maybe those are the things that freak people out most.
I do think it was probably pretty creative effects at the time. They haven't aged well.
No, that's true.
But it was, and creative in how they went about it. This was back in the day. You didn't have CG. There's scenes where it's really cold and everybody can see their breath. They actually just had to make it really cold so everybody could see their breath. Also, again, knowing what I know about the making of, some of it's very interesting because, like, Linda Blair, who was the age she is in it, like 12, didn't know a lot of what was happening, and they were very deliberate about that. The most direct example, and this is gross, but there it is. There's a bit in which violently and bloodily Regan is essentially shoving a crucifix into her vagina over and over and over again. And it is, I don't find it disturbing now. It probably would have been disturbing at the time. Now I'm just like, yeah, it's gross. And again, because I knew it was there. So that's the thing. But I also know she was just told to sit on a shoebox and take it and just shove this into the shoebox over and over. And I've seen interviews with her. She genuinely had no concept of what the film was supposed to be making it look like was happening. And there's a lot. Trish was like, why did they need a separate demon voice? And I think some of it is because the demon voice was really awesome. She did an incredible job. But some of it is you want the possessed girl to say things that you don't want to make the 12-year-old
say.
And I appreciate that as well.
Yeah.
And there are some very cool things, very creative things in how they made it. And again, the Beatles were incredibly creative. and their contribution should never be, we owe most of modern music to them. We maybe owe most of modern horror movies to The Exorcist. I don't know for sure, but definitely a lot to The Exorcist.
The thing is, wow. I feel the same way you do about the Beatles. It's like, oh, I get why this was important at the time. It doesn't do anything for me now at all.
And every once in a while, I can hear a performance, an older performance, that I'm like, oh, that really is something I can, especially if you get some context of what was happening or whatever. It's been a few years, but I heard Paul McCartney perform. With all the love in the world, he should stop. He doesn't sound good. He's not in tune even. It's not.
That happens. That happens when you get older.
I know, and that's when you stop.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, I feel bad about that reaction.
Another thing about the Beatles that's interesting is, like 30 years ago, it was a long time ago now, but some Beatles song was part of a TV advertisement.
Okay.
And a lot of people were offended by that. Said they sold out or whatever. And I think Paul McCartney in an interview said, I don't know what people are talking about. Like, John and I would get together and we'd say things like, let's ride a Rolls Royce today. It's like, we did this to make money, you know.
You've gone completely slow and shaky. It just kind of looks like you're drooling on yourself now.
But it was just the fact that it was in a commercial.
There we go.
People were so offended, and Paul's like, you know, we would get together and talk about writing. And for me, like, it's Christmas season, and I like to listen to the radio with Christmas songs. John Lennon's Christmas song and Paul McCartney's Christmas song are some of the worst Christmas songs ever written. I mean, they're so clearly written for, like,
and you know, there is an era, not actually in the Beatles, but in the post-Beatles careers of both gentlemen, where they were essentially competing against each other. And it caused them, ironically, to produce some of their worst stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I like some of Paul McCartney's stuff, and I guess John Lennon's too, but it's like, for the most part, no, doesn't do anything for me. But that's fine. I know a lot of people that they really like it, and that's fine. But no.
This is a funny tangent that pops into my head because of what you were saying. Mostly because I have been trying to process something, and one of the ways I thought about it is I'm like, it's like when they take a classic song and put it in a commercial, and that feels gross in a lot of cases. Now, to be fair, most of the time when that happens, they're long dead and they don't have the rights to it anyway, and so now it's being used for whatever. I mean, it's not like they're making money; it's people are making money on it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But anyway, Leonard Cohen song "Hallelujah."
Yeah,
amazing song.
I think so. Yeah,
love that song.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I think my favorite version is it Jonathan Cale or whatever. It became kind of popular for a while in like the 2000s or whatever, and for a lot of people, if it's not the Leonard Cohen version, it's probably that version.
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, and I kind of like that better. I like Leonard Cohen, and Leonard Cohen has such a distinctive singing voice, and it's amazing. But for that song, I don't know. I like his better. But anyway, I like both of them. It's great. I really like it. It comes up a lot. If anything, it's maybe overused now, but I really like it. There is a thing where people will essentially rewrite the lyrics of the song to make it explicitly Christian, to make it actually about the birth of Jesus. I thought I just encountered a wild instance of it when I had to attend a church service one time, and one of the people there had created their own arrangement for it. I found this really hilarious because afterwards the pastor was talking about it and said, and Leonard Cohen, he was a Jew, which first of all, he said a Jew, which was great. But what also was fun was at the time Leonard Cohen was still alive. So Trish and I just leaned over to each other and we're like, yep, he still is. But I have since found out this is a thing that happens. Like a few different like churches and things have done versions of this. And I hate it. I hate it so much.
Here's the thing though, too. I don't know anyone but Cohen who sings all the verses to begin with. Everybody cuts verses out of it. I don't know what that's about.
Well, and some of the verses are more explicit than others, so that can be a factor.
Okay. And the first two verses are making reference to King David. So I think people think you can spin off of that and do whatever you want with it. Although, I mean, I think those first two, the verses about King David are kind of are poetically very interesting. And then he moves away from that later. But I like at Christmas time, you hear that song performed by Pentatonics, I want to say, some Christian group. Now, I don't remember any verses they changed.
Wait, is Pentatonics a Christian group?
I think so. Isn't
I've only ever heard them do pop covers, so.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, this song will play on the radio at Christmas time, and in their version, they don't make any Christian allusions to it as far as I know. I don't hear anything Christian in it. They take some verses out. They don't sing all the verses that Cohen had. But I thought they were a Christian group, like an a cappella group, maybe even. I don't know.
They are an a cappella group.
Okay.
They were on one of during the short-lived thing where there were a ton of a cappella game shows or whatever. They were the big hit off of one of those. I've got some of their stuff on my phone. I like them, but none of it I've heard is specifically Christian.
Okay, well, maybe I'm wrong.
And I know they did some stuff with Lindsey Sterling, who doesn't particularly do Christian stuff either.
Okay.
But maybe they do some. I don't know.
Well, it's supposed to be a Christmas song, and there's nothing Christmassy about it, so I don't get it.
Well, but this is the thing. This is why it cracks me up. He says, so the reason this came up is one of the many concerts I was attending this weekend. The high school choir concert. There were a bunch of solos in the concert program. Like choirs would sing songs, and then one person would come out and sing a song, and then choirs would sing a song, and then one was the thing. I find it strange, whatever. But this is what they did a lot. But also, there were some kids who came up with, I guess, on their own, they wanted to do a solo song, but they weren't like seniors or good enough, or I don't know what. So what they did is they sang their songs before the concert officially started, and they had not been announced beforehand.
Warm
And
up
so they
act
just
or
sort of did
something.
their own thing. Whatever. I'm listening to them. It's fine. Uh, three people come up. There are two people and a person with a guitar, and I very clearly recognize it's Hallelujah, and I'm kind of excited. I don't think about it being weird choice, but I'm excited because I like the song. And then they start singing, and very quickly I can tell, oh no, they've altered it,
Mhm.
and I don't like this. But I don't set the place on fire or start ripping out chairs because I'm a nice person. The concert begins, and then the concert happens, and like I said, choirs do songs, and then somebody does a solo song or whatever. And then this kid comes up to do one of the solos later in it, and it's Hallelujah again. But this time it's the regular one, like the original. And I'm very excited. And shortly after that excitement kicks in, I'm like, but nothing about this song is Christmas.
Yeah, I don't get it.
This is in no way a holiday song.
No.
What are you doing? And he did a great job, and I enjoyed it. And he also picked and chose some of the verses because, again, as a high school student, some of those verses would not be good to sing at a choir
Yeah.
concert.
Yeah. I didn't really think about that.
But Trish and I did because we were both waiting. We were both like, "Oh, is he gonna do? Is he? Oh no, he skipped that one. All right." I didn't realize Trish and I were both doing it until the drive home, and she mentioned it, and I'm like, I was but so yeah, then this brought this in my head, and I'm like, and the way I often try and think of these things, it's less about me being like, Tony, why do you feel this way? And it's more about, this bothers me. How would I explain it to somebody who did this? And it's hard because there are issues of privilege involved that if you don't acknowledge those, it's hard to do, because I wouldn't necessarily feel this way about every song turned into a different kind of like parody, for lack of a better sense. That's not what's happening here, but the concept as a whole is not something that bothers me. But I was trying to think of it, and I'm like, the closest I can think of, I was trying to do like, could we take Silent Night and make it like a Muslim song? Would that be an equivalent? Like, I don't know. But because most Christians I know don't have any problem with taking traditional carols and turning them into commercial. But that was the closest thing I could think of. Is I was like, have you ever seen a commercial and it's a song you really like, and they've changed the words to make it about fucking mufflers or something? Like, that's how this makes me feel.
Oh, I think
And
that's a
that's not
good.
entirely accurate, because this bothers me more, but I think that's just because this song means more to me, and because it was a non-Christian song written by a Jewish man who was one of the greatest gifts to modern music that ever existed and is dead now. Don't fuck with his song, people. Just because it has the word hallelujah in it doesn't mean, oh, this should definitely be a Jesus song.
It actually means the opposite, because I think the whole song is about, I think it's portraying hallelujah as it's often called a cold and broken hallelujah. It's
Yeah.
to me, it's an exquisite expression of
Ecstasy, I think, is the best word here.
yes, but how that's mingled with pain and how it's mingled
Yes.
with struggle.
It is those moments of ecstasy in cold, bleak, difficult existence, and cold, bleak, difficult love, cold, bleak, difficult relationships.
Which,
and it's the moments, some of which are glorious, some of which are kind of pathetic, of ecstasy. Here's the problem. I don't mean ecstasy in a physical sense. I don't mean ecstasy in a religious sense. Those are the only two senses I know to use that word.
well,
But I mean emotional ecstasy
Right.
It's not necessarily faith-based.
Right. But a Christian music does not emphasize a rich and nuanced sense of that term.
No.
They only emphasize, raising your
Hallelujah.
hands and, glory to God kind of thing, which that's fine. That's their thing. But this song,
That's not what it's for.
no.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, I when you try to turn it into essentially you're changing the genres, if you ask me. And that's a more dramatic thing than just changing a few words or whatever.
And maybe this is some internal hipsterism or whatever, but anytime I hear that, my immediate thought is you clearly don't understand the original song. You clearly don't know what the song is about. Not in a profane way, not in a you took something I love and turned it into your own personal shit, but in a sense of this is a bad song to make into a Birth of Jesus song.
That's what I think too. Yeah,
like
I agree.
Not just you shouldn't, but like this is a bad choice.
Yeah.
Because this song is very not.
Yeah, that's really. Yeah,
it's not just that it's not. It's very not.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Totally and I mean, you could, but you'd have to be way more nuanced than the lyrics of any version I've heard.
Correct. I agree with that too.
So if you are, we've got some Christians that listen, or at least used to. What's your feeling on this? Do you sympathize with us? Do you think that we're assholes? I mean, that's a general question, I suppose. It doesn't even have to be about the song or anything. Do you sympathize with us? Do you think we're assholes? It could be both. What's your take? This episode is a lot of things that confuse me. Hallelujah done as a Christmas song. The Exorcist, just its entire deal, and William.
There's a thing where if there's any kind of biblical allusion in a song, Christians think, oh, that's ours. I mean, I've had songs like I had a lyric in a song that was I am David trying once again to kill Goliath. That's just in the song. That's the only biblical allusion in the song as far as I know. And my friend who I write songs with was worried people are going to think this is a Christian song. I said, because it makes basically a literary allusion to the Bible that everybody knows David and Goliath. Some people, I mean, that's just a popular notion out in the zeitgeist. That's not something you have to be a Christian or Jewish to understand. But then I guess it did happen that people would listen to it and say, and would when we posted it places in the comments, they'd say, "Are you a Christian band?" What? Because we make an allusion to David and Goliath.
And you're like, no, we're not like some pentatonics. What are you talking about?
But you see what I'm saying? It's like if
no,
you
absolutely.
make any kind of biblical reference in it, like I said, and it references King David, that's fine. But then certain people are like, "Oh, this belongs to us." It's like, I don't know.
It's a reference-based thing because here's the deal. David trying to kill Goliath. I haven't heard your song. I don't want to. I'm assuming it's what we call a metaphor.
Right. That's right.
And a lot of people can't get, like, people seem to have trouble with metaphors on things. And, I'm really excited for all the comments to tell me that I missed the metaphors in The Exorcist, which bring it on. I would love that. But also, there exists within the broad multi-denominational base of Christianity a fair number of individuals who think a great deal of the things in Scripture are actually intended as metaphors.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Which then makes it for a very deep irony.
Yeah.
If you hear the song and be like, oh, this is a Christian thing.
No, you are correct.
Metaphor. Like it always was. But
like it always was. Yeah.
Again, that's their school. I'm not bringing my beliefs about Scripture into this because they have no bearing.
That's an interesting point you're making, though, I think. Very interesting.
It came up recently. I think we watched one of Pete Holmes' latest specials, and Pete Holmes is interesting in that he was raised very Christian, and then really got sort of weirdly agnostic in his 30s. And then later in life, sort of found his faith again.
Hmm.
But in a very, I feel like in a different way. And so he had a lot of talking about this kind of thing. And there have been some famous quotes. I can't remember who it was, but the whole idea that like religion is a blanket we put over the universe to give it shape we can understand, things like that. Um, so yeah, that idea of a lot of this is metaphoric in order for human minds to understand impossible things that we could not possibly understand because we're not God. Um, but some people don't go for that. But yeah, very very often it's a reference thing. I've had that. That's just a certain type of person. I've had people. I'll say something and they'll say something back, and I'll be like, "That's not even what I was talking about." I'm like, "Well, you said this." I'm like, "Yeah, I use that one word as sort of a metaphoric thing here. That's not
Yeah.
um and having nothing to do with religion in some cases. Like
Right.
just
Right.
like, will you reference that thing? And I think some of that sometimes also comes out from a I want to feel involved, and so I'm gonna grab onto the part that I think I understand.
Sure. There's also a little bit though of in our culture, it seems like there's a lot of suspicion. Like, what's the agenda of this person talking to me? And so you're constantly looking for that, and you're often
I am.
picking the wrong one. It's like, nope. I mean, I see what you hooked on into there, but I don't have that agenda. I just used that illusion or that metaphor or that whatever it is because it's again, you hear David and Goliath referenced all the time in like I wouldn't be surprised if there are people who don't even realize that's a biblical reference. They just somehow know that David's the little guy and Goliath's the big guy. I mean, they
For
picked that up. They don't even
for
necessarily
good or
know.
for ill, Judeo-Christian mythology and culture and beliefs have permeated Western culture to such a
Yeah,
degree that it
yeah,
is part of the culture
yeah,
outside of being a religious faith.
yeah. And I think some people are especially paranoid of political or religious agendas, right? So if you make anything that could even be construed as proselytizing or even be construed as trying to push a political agenda, they're going to jump on that, even if
Yeah.
you didn't intend that at all. And so you end up realizing there are certain words and turns of phrase you have to avoid because if you don't, people are going to pigeonhole you and you
Anytime
can't
I'm
talk about
I'm having a conversation with somebody and they say, "For God's sake," or they tell me to go to hell, I'm like, "Are you a Christian?"
that.
Every time.
You should do that. I make fun of people who say Jesus or Jesus Christ in a profane way, I'll make fun of what they said. Or if
I
it's
say that a
Christmas
lot.
time, I'll say, "Hey, baby Jesus," you know, something just to make a joke out of it.
So supposedly this is going
Baby
to be a
Jesus.
mild winter because of El Nino.
Yeah, I think I've heard that.
And I've been going around saying, yeah, supposedly it's going to be a mild winter because of the boy. We should be sure to thank the boy. Or if we want to do the cultural idioms, baby Jesus
Yep,
is
baby
going to
Jesus.
make it a mild winter. We should
Yep.
thank the baby Jesus for this. Um,
Yep. Hey, it's Christmas. It's baby Jesus.
I have honestly, and I'm not great at it. I have made some attempts to curb my use of Jesus's name as a expletive.
Hmm.
Um, because I do think it bothers some people, and just in general, I'm like, why not? I'm not attached to it. Um, Perhaps unfortunately, uh, that is mostly translated into me attempting to substitute Jeebus from that one Simpsons episode.
Yeah.
Uh, but to my surprise, it's starting to work. Like I'm often will say that instead. I do like some of the weird ones, like cheese and crisps and Jiminy Christmas and that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
Jiminy Christmas. That's what a lot of people said when I was growing up. Jiminy Christmas.
Uh,
Yeah.
there's a you probably know this. There's a National Geographic show called The Incredible Dr. Pole.
No, I don't think I
He's a
do.
he's a he's a rural vet. So he deals with a lot of farm animals and stuff. And
Oh.
he's originally from somewhere in Europe. He has a pretty heavy accent. And his go-tos are Jiminy Christmas and Jumpin' Jehoshaphat. And he says them all the time
Yeah,
in
I
a
heard
very
that
thick
one.
accent. So it's really funny.
I
Jiminy
heard that.
Christmas.
I heard that one. Jumpin' Jehoshaphat. Yeah.
Jumpin' Jehoshaphat. All right. We're way over time, and I have to level up my D&D character because in a few hours we're gonna play. So
Oh, great.
yeah.
That'll be fun.
So I'm gonna do that. Okay, people, in order to avoid this happening in the future, write us an email, themagicaltalkinghat@gmail.com. Otherwise, it's just gonna be Jesus and the Exorcist all day. If you're lucky, maybe some Leonard Cohen. You don't know. Go to the blog. Tell us your thoughts and feelings on The Exorcist and Leonard Cohen and Jesus. And do you hate space veterans as much as William? Or do you actually think maybe astronauts are cool and good? Let us know in the comments below.